There's an element of, would it be nice if the pie chart was a little more like the songs I write take up more space on that pie chart? That is definitely the goal. That would be the dream.
I can get tunnel vision, I can get kinda stuck. You come along and save me, point out of this stuff. Tell me a funny
That's
story.
Eric Radloff, a musician and teacher living in LA who records under the name Okudaxij. And the music you're hearing right now, you guessed it, also Okudaxij. And I'm Joel Lehman. You're listening to Connection Request. Thanks for spending some time with me today. I am so excited to have Eric on the show. He's an amazingly talented singer-songwriter, producer, teacher, and performer who's been making music his whole life. He also happens to be a good friend of mine, and I've been wanting to do a sit-down conversation like this with him forever. He first became known as the frontman for Bear Attack, a band he started with friends and classmates while studying at the University of Southern California in LA. That band developed a sizable following and even landed some of their music on the hit TV show Pretty Little Liars. And even though that project is no longer active, that doesn't stop almost 45,000 people from streaming them on Spotify every month. When Bear Attack ended, Eric started a new project called Okudaxij. We'll explain the name near the end of the episode. Pitchfork has hailed his new project as joyfully capturing the oddities of life in a way that's genuinely sentimental, which feels right to me. His third Okudaxij record came out last year, and he predicts his fourth might come out before the end of 2023. If that's not excitement enough, he has another project that is coming out on the same day this episode is being released. He and his wife Jenna are expecting their first child. I'm thinking of you both today, Eric and Jenna. In our conversation, we talk about how parenthood may recontextualize his career, how he thinks about success as an indie musician, what going on his first national tour was like, and his relationship with social media as an artist. Plus, he turned the mic around on me a couple times to ask how my new chapter is going. So as such, no coda today, because we went pretty long. Lastly, if you like the show, would you take a minute to rate and review us wherever you're listening? Maybe post or engage with the show on social? Every little bit helps. Okay, here's my conversation with Eric Radloff, also known as Okudaxij.
So I am a musician living in Los Angeles. I went to school at USC, University of Southern California, in 2009, and I've lived out here since then. And love it out here. My wife lives here with me, and I am a musician, songwriter, and teacher. I have my own solo artistic project, which is my main songwriting outlet. I'll produce some of my friends. I'll do some studio work sometimes. I went on my biggest tour for the first time recently. That was very exciting. Yeah, I would describe myself as a musician and teacher living in LA.
Yeah, I was going to ask if any of those labels kind of rise to the top for you. I think in my own career, I feel this too, which is I don't really want to be put in one box because I actually do a lot of different things. Sort of broadest broad sense is musician and teacher. And then there's a lot of things that kind of fall into that. Is that right?
Yes. I would say I self-identify as a songwriter, mostly. To the IRS, I am mostly a piano teacher.
That makes sense. And that's what we're all here for. You've been doing this for a long time. Something that I know about you is you had this alternate career possibility of being a doctor.
Yeah.
And you were thinking about going pre-med. What would you go back and tell Eric Radloff from senior year back in Hutchinson? And what would he think of what you've done since then?
Oh my God. This life I'm living does feel like some alternate timeline that I entered a cheat code to enter into. So yes, I was curious about entering medical school. I always loved music since I was 7 or 8. Loved plinking around on the piano and stuff. And just going to the University of Minnesota and getting a pre-med degree or whatever. And I was like, I'll do this. This seems like a good thing to do. It sounded interesting. And my parents were actually the ones who were like, Eric, you really love music. You should pursue this. So it felt like I entered some alternate timeline where I went to LA and went to school. And I don't know. I'm really happy with how things have gone. So when I think about talking to myself almost half my life ago, I would say maybe learn some technical tools right now. Put a little more attention into learning stuff on the computer.
Like editing and production kind of stuff, or
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I think so.
yeah.
I think that would be, it's very practical.
That's great. I love it. And what a gift to at that time have your parents being the one of saying like, don't do this quote unquote safe thing. I know becoming a doctor is very hard, but you've been great at it.
I don't know.
But follow your passion.
Yeah.
Yeah, that feels rare to me and like a gift.
Yeah, it is. It's something, the older I get, the more I'm like, wow, that's pretty amazing. And it's the opposite of the classic story that you usually hear. I'm going to go do this whether you want me to or not, mom and dad. And I think it was difficult for me because I've always been really afraid of change. It's something I've always struggled with. And I think for me to do something like this, to move away, like I never even left my hometown hardly until I graduated high school. It wasn't even like I left the state, not sure. I was just like kind of content with wherever I was. So I think I needed that push. And that push was like a huge gift. Yeah.
So one thing that I think about a lot when it comes to artists and musicians and teachers even is I feel like I'm going to put myself in the general public right now. I think we just think that we know what it takes, right? Because like we have a relationship with the product and we listen to music and we see popular music stars and that kind of stuff. But what do we, the general public, get wrong about the life of a musician and artists more generally?
Oh my. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and say, Joel, you are not one of the general public when it comes to music. You are a musician. I know this.
True.
Well, actually, to be honest, I mean, I am an artist and I like what I make and I feel confident in what I make. I went on tour recently with Will Joseph Cook, and then Tessa Violet was the headliner and she's great. And then Dazer May was the other opener. And these people are working their ass off. They have like their, what's the phrase? They have their eye on the prize. They're doing, they have a goal. They're doing their thing. So I feel like it's easy, sit on our phone, like hear a song, be like, that song kind of stinks and whatever. Like, I don't like their song, and it's easy that like anyone can make a song like that. Whatever, their style is weird. Like the amount of drive, regardless of whether or not you like the art that these people are making, I have so much respect for like the hustle and the drive. Like when I was on tour, I'm like, okay, I'm a songwriter, but seeing how these people are like, okay, I have to make this post here, I have to do this, I have to respond to this person here, like it is like a 24/7 job. So I would say the general public, when it comes to artists, like regardless of what you think of, you name it or you name them, it's pretty amazing how these people got to where they are. If I were then to group myself in that's me saying like, okay, there are these artists up here who are like, I'm gonna be a superstar. These people want that.
Sure.
For an artist like me, I don't know. I don't know.
That's okay. Well, you're thinking that, I'll just say it's interesting that I guess you said superstar, and that makes sense. That to me doesn't feel like a thing that you're aspiring for. But as far as like working your butt off and having goals, I think of you as someone who has those things. But I guess it's what the goals are. Is that what you would say differentiates you a little bit?
I would say, to be honest, I have been, I don't know how goal oriented I am. And maybe that's something I would go back and tell 18-year-old Eric, like maybe, but I honestly, at this point, I've kind of accepted that. And I'm like, I like how you brought up like, Eric, what is something the general public doesn't understand about artists? And I was like, well, let me also put myself in the general public.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm just being humble. I really think that the work ethic, the drive, the goals that a lot of these artists have to reach success is really amazing. I would say I think this is a strength of mine. I am just compelled to write songs. I think of music a lot. It's very easy for me to be inspired by something. And I think the goals that I have are like, I just need to finish this song this week in the next couple days. I need to finish it, work hard on it, and make it. And I think that's how I'm operating at this point.
What I hear from that, like, and we'll talk about success in a minute, but like, aren't some of the best artists of our generation and past generations, like, if anything, I think they have more of a focus on the art itself rather than like where that particularly goes or what happens to it, or do you know what I'm saying? Like, in some ways, to me, it seems like you just kind of have a singular focus on like, well, I just want to make this stuff. Yeah. That is what drives me. That's what my passion is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think there's any one right answer or one right path, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like, to me anyway, it doesn't seem like a negative for you to not be thinking as much about your social media posts or presence, or to have very concrete 2, 3, 4, 5-year plans. It's like you have a very specific vision and art and inspiration that you want to get out there, and that's what your focus is. Am I wrong?
No, I think you're 100% right. Yeah. So
great. Well, thanks for coming.
This has been awesome.
And
I'll go finish my bagel now. No, I think you're right. And when we've talked about this in the past, I've been kind of hard on myself about not emphasizing social media, not emphasizing self-promotion and stuff like that. So yeah, I am goal-oriented in that, like, I have things that I want to make, and doggone it, I'm going to make them. No one's going to stop me from making it.
Yeah. Again, for what it's worth, I should say I love your music. I love what you make. And to me, it always feels so specific and unique and different and intentional. I think that's success in and of itself. I think that, like, to make the thing that you want to make and not have a label or somebody trying to make you make something you don't want to make.
Yeah.
I think that's success in and of itself, which leads me to,
thank you.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think in any career and life, the question of like, what is success, or how do you know if you've made it? I think that's one that we're all thinking about all the time. And I definitely have that question about you and about musicians and artists in general. To set that up, let me just list off a few stats and facts to set this question up. Okay.
I'm excited. Yeah.
Bear Attack, which was your first project that you started with some of your friends in college when you were at USC, that project, which is no longer active, but a lot of people still have a relationship with that music. I just looked today, 45,000 monthly listeners for that band on Spotify. So that's just one streaming platform.
Mm-hmm.
On your most popular song, Carnivore, 5 million streams on that song. You guys got 3 of your tunes on Pretty Little Liars, the TV show. Mm-hmm. Under Okudaxij, your most popular song, you've had 56,000 streams. And that's an independent project, so you don't have the backing of like a label or management company.
Right. Yeah.
You, like you said, released 3 records. You've gone on a national tour with Will Joseph Cook. You have a robust piano studio. You've taught the children of people that a lot of us would definitely recognize those names. You've got great press by Pitchfork. You make a living as a musician. Have you made it in the music world, Eric?
Well, when you say it like that, I'm like, yeah, sure. Yeah, I guess so. I'm doing it. It's hard to not do the comparison game where you're like, there's always that next rung above you of and it's always people you know, which is a great problem to have. Oh, someone I know is like really killing it, doing great in this particular thing. Yeah. And you compare yourself to that. And it's weird to like intellectually understand that will never end. doesn't matter. That thing will always go on and on and on forever. So um, I think in some, honestly, some days I'm like, I'm really content and pleased with what I've done so far. And yeah, yes, there are some days where I'm like, oh man, I haven't done anything. I haven't done anything worthwhile, Um, and I kind of think that's a good thing. I think there was a point when I was always hard on myself and being like, wow, I haven't done anything compared to all these other people or whatever. And that was unhealthy. But I think feeling good about what I've done, but knowing that there are still places to go and things to learn and ways to get better. I think that's kind of where I am right now. Yeah. So I would like to, I think, make more music with more people and produce more. So that is something I have my eye on. And that's a skill I've been working on, like producing on a computer and stuff by myself.
Yeah.
To kind of attain that. So I guess in a lot of ways, I'm like, yeah, like 18-year-old me would be like, yo, that guy's doing a really good job. Like he's making a living in LA. He's making music. People listen to his music, his old band, which by the way, I have no idea. We never had that many people listening to our music when we existed. It's just like, what? I have no idea. It's so strange. But that's
wild. That band hasn't been together in how many years? 7
years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty cool. It's kind of fun. There's a platform called SoundCloud, and you can basically, a lot of these platforms will tell you like where people are listening to your music, and it seems like there are certain areas of the world that these songs are like just getting to. The Backpack song in particular is one where I'm like, now it's over here, now it's over here. People are listening to it, and you can see like people's names start like you start seeing Japanese characters start like listening to your songs, or like so and so liked your song, or you'll see like Arabic characters enter, and you're like, oh, interesting, like a whole new world kind of just started passing the song around. That's really meaningful. That's cool.
I was going to say, we were joking before we started recording about how, like, just by the numbers, it seems like more people are listening to the project you're no longer actively involved in than your current project.
Yeah, by a lot.
but if you think about it as like music that you spent a lot of time on with some really good friends, and like you co-wrote all of the songs, I think, but like music that you put out into the world as an artist, years later, after anyone is doing any active promotion, is like resonating with people, making people happy, and like they're finding it. Like that's gotta feel good, right?
Yeah, it feels good, but most of the time I forget that that's happening.
Yeah.
Which is
that's
like...
why you have me in your life to remind you.
Yeah, no, that feels good. I mean, a part of me, I don't know how much Pretty Little Liars, the TV show, is still like being watched by the next generation or whatever. So I feel like that definitely helps. Yeah. As far as like an entry into the thing, because I think some young people still watch it. I don't know.
I'm sure they do. It'd be interesting to see the Shazam data. I know, like I often discover new artists because I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing, right? And
right.
Yeah,
that would be cool.
What about, like, for you? We've talked about how, like, if we were to draw a pie chart of your income, the bulk of that is coming from teaching. Is that right?
Yeah.
So how do you think about the financial aspect of what you do and how you make a living in your profession, as well as like in a perfect world, would you be changing that pie chart? Do you like doing a bunch of different things? Like how do you think about the business and financial aspect of what you do, and the fact that you do have multiple jobs kind of stitched together to make a life and sustain yourself and your family?
Yeah, I've always enjoyed teaching. I don't know, like, if I never had to make money again, I think some part of me would still want to continue teaching just because it feels good. I think I'm good
That's
at.
cool.
Yeah, I think I'm good at it at this point. I really like that. There's an element of, would it be nice if the pie chart was a little more like the songs I write take up more space on that pie chart? That is definitely the goal. That would be the dream. The way that my work schedule works right now is I teach most days for like 4 or 5 hours. And the value of that is I work hard on teaching and I get the money I need for the day. And then I have a lot of time. And that time I have is, I don't know. I don't know how I'd evaluate it, but that time that I have, that is the hours I can spend working on my songs, practicing, basically just like developing skills and stuff. Which next time someone calls me for a gig or something, which as far as working that into the pie chart or the schedule, it's some seasons I'm extremely busy and I need to cancel a bunch of lessons. I need to go on tour for a month and a half.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. It's interesting. When I'm not playing video games with my extra time, I think I'm using it pretty wisely, and it helps me make a good impression next time I get called in to play on someone's album or something. So it's interesting. The amount of money I make right now, it's definitely like I can't go under it. So there are certain times I usually will say yes to most things. If I'm not getting paid the same amount as I make when I'm teaching, sometimes at this point I'll have to turn it down. Because, as we haven't talked about yet on this podcast, my wife is having a baby, our baby, next week. And money, you need it to help your child be, supported and live a stress-free life as much as possible.
So since you brought that up, how, as we sit here today, this won't come out, might come out in a week from today, which is, as of now, potentially a big day in your life. How are you feeling, Eric, about fatherhood and about having a kid, and especially how that impacts and maybe changes or recontextualizes your career?
I am so excited. I mean, this is something that my wife and I, Jenna, we've always talked about this. We've always wanted to do this together. Felt like a good time. We're both in our early 30s. We have this nice apartment to ourselves. It's spacious enough in LA, which we're really fortunate to have. To be honest, it's one of those things where no matter what happens, I know that my life is going to be forever changed, and I'm going to be a significant amount of my brain power and work power and whatever, my whole life will be pointed towards raising this child as well as I can. And career-wise, I really don't know what that means. I have been, for the past 6 months or so, been really trying to write as much music as possible on my own, because a week from now, I'm like, when will I be able to do this again? So there's been a little bit of cram time leading up to that. And career-wise, just making money, I don't know. I've heard that for a lot of people, it's a huge motivator. Yeah. So, I've never been one who's really hustling too hard. I'm working on my skills. I work on getting better at things, but I'm not so much networking. Maybe this is going to change my whole worldview, motivate me. But I'm just kind of trusting that, we planned pretty well for this. It's probably going to be kind of hard in a lot of ways, but I'm just trusting that we'll adjust. And honestly, I think it'll be in all ways just a really great thing. Yeah. I think I'm going to make better music. I think I'll work harder. Yeah.
You guys are going to be amazing parents, and I am really excited for you both. And I also, you just alluded to this, I'm curious how the stories that you tell in your music will change and evolve, and the contents of your music will yeah, you'll like, I just think, I don't have kids, as you know, but I think when people do that, just like changes a lot of their worldview and what they think about and what inspires them and all that kind of stuff.
I'm anticipating it, and I'm just looking forward to it.
Yeah.
It'll definitely be a bit different.
Yeah. So you mentioned a bit ago that you went on your, I think, first like mega national
Yeah,
tour, or definitely like the kind of the biggest production scale thing you've
definitely.
done. How that was last fall, yeah?
Yeah, that was the end of August into the beginning of October.
Yeah, how was that experience, especially in a world where, as far as I understand, a lot of the economics of like being a musician these days, like playing live for people and going on tours, often where people get the money. It's not from streams and like
Right.
royalties from using that kind of stuff. I don't know. How was that experience overall? You already mentioned it a little bit, and does it change anything the way you think about how you do your craft going forward?
Definitely a life changing experience to have
Hmm.
that. It was something where I demanded, or I asked for basically the amount of money I would get for if I was teaching, which is like
Hmm.
like, as long as you can pay me this amount, I'm down to go. Yeah. And from what I understand, the musicians who go, not I'm not there's a lot of opinions and there's a lot of differences in what people get paid when they go on tour as musicians. I was a musician in a band. I wasn't
Yeah.
a performing, artist.
Yeah.
But the artists who were like promoting themselves on this tour, from what I understand, and this is mostly how it goes, like they're lucky if they break even.
Hmm.
If you are not like a huge megastar going on
Yeah.
tour, you kind of hoping to break even and then like break into that next tier where you actually where going on tour becomes very profitable.
Yeah.
That is true. Going on tour, having that live experience, people aren't buying music; they're streaming it.
Yeah.
So you,
So is it like a marketing vehicle then, or is it like just a way to build the engagement with your audience and get, like,
yes,
sorry, I'm making this conversation about business, but
it
like,
should.
as
No, it
as far as
is.
why artists that are in that tier that we're talking about
Yeah,
do it,
yeah.
what's the motivation, or why do it?
It's exactly that. It is, you're planting seeds for the next tour, and then the next tour you're
Yeah.
planting seeds for the next tour until, and basically you're scaling up your production, you're scaling up the size of the venue you're going to, and
Yeah.
each time you're kind of leveling up. And at a certain point, every city you go to, instead of doing 100-person venues, like 150, 200 venues next time, it's 400. So that means that you're
Yeah.
getting twice as many people buying tickets, twice as many people buying merch, which is a
Yeah.
huge deal. And then the next time you do that, you're getting people engaging with you on social media. And those are people who are more likely to stream your music, which, even though it's not necessarily like the amount of money you'd make when people were buying CDs, it's still significant.
Sure.
Even though I know that Spotify doesn't pay enough and all that stuff, like people still do make a significant
You
amount of
still
money
get,
from
yeah.
streams. Yeah.
That Thank you for helping kind of explain and contextualize that.
Yeah. It's very much it's connecting with your fans
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
establish that kind of, not
Yeah.
relationship, but they feel more, I don't know, like the artist becomes more a part of like who they are and they love you more. So
Yeah. Just as far as like, for you anyway, like live performing just generally, is there like a validation there that, like, do you get equal validation and feelings from being in a studio and making music and just being on your own versus performing, or what's the relationship between the different kind of ways that you show up as an artist?
What is the less vulgar version of Mary F. Kill? Because I've done this with some friends and we talked about performing, songwriting, and recording. Which one
Yeah,
would you? It's like date, dump.
sure. Why don't you rank them 1 to 3?
There it is. I am a songwriter. I love songwriting, and then the recording of it and the performing of it, I would say are tied for second and third.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
So they're all part of a balanced breakfast. I do need all of them.
Sure.
It's interesting going on tour, but then again, since I identify as a songwriter, if it's not my song being performed, the part of me is like, you know, it could be like a Beatles song, whatever. Like I'm really just like playing music and making people happy, and that feels great. The ultimate gratification is like I'm singing my song.
Yeah.
People are singing along. Nothing better than that. That's the ultimate. But yeah, there's definitely some part of me where rocking out, playing guitar, dancing around on stage, hearing the applause. Yeah, it feels great. But there are a couple songs that I helped Will Joseph Cook write, so we perform those. I'm like, it feels a little different because I'm like,
there's like an extra. You're like, I did this. I had a hand in this.
Yeah. So it feels like people are clapping for me a little more on those songs.
Yeah.
Even though they don't know that, but I'm like,
oh
shucks. But yeah, no, I mean that's it. It's seasons, I guess. Like as soon as I got back from the tour, there's a kind of a post-tour depression that people talked about, and it's kind of like summer camp. Did you go to summer camp?
Oh yeah.
So, with summer camp, you have built-in socialization all the time. You're surrounded by people. You sleep in cabins and bunks with people all the time. You're eating with people all the time. You make fast friendships just by sheer proximity. Like you're constantly around these people. And then suddenly the bus come or your parents come pick you up and you go home. And then for the first time in however long, you're like, I'm just sitting in my room maybe or whatever. So there was like sort of like a social withdrawal I had at the end of tour that I had to adjust to. And I was like, man, this is tough. So all the touring and performing and playing and the applause and hanging out with fans and stuff, really amazing. As soon as I got back and had to readjust to my normal quote unquote life, I got back into songwriting and I was like, oh, I really missed this. I really missed this part of it.
You weren't writing a ton on the road?
I still had, because it was still inspiring. It was super inspiring. Just didn't have the amount of time to sit down. I didn't have like the computer I usually use or the piano I usually use. And honestly, there just wasn't that much silence, which I need.
Yeah. Something you mentioned a couple times, and we've talked about tour before, that you, like with Tessa and with Will especially, you definitely saw like, oh wow, a lot of what they're doing in the off time is like social media, basically, right? It's like creating content specifically for social. And we talked a little bit earlier that you have, I think, in some ways kind of like resisted that, or that, I don't know if it doesn't come naturally to you, or that's just like you're on social, you know, people engage with you and can follow you, but your eyes were just kind of open. Can you talk just a little bit about that, as well as like now with the benefit of hindsight, you've had a long career, you have seen how other artists are incorporating using social. I don't know, how are you thinking about it going forward?
It has been a slow burn for me that I'm like slowly coming around to, which is kind of a theme in my life, the slow burn. And I remember talking to you because you're one of the first people I knew personally who was like, oh yeah, social media is obviously here to stay. It's part of the future. It's super important. It's really valuable. Obviously has some issues and some downsides. But yeah, I think witnessing that on tour, seeing how people seeing how these artists engage with fans, how they think like, oh, this would be a good thing to post. Kind of like capturing moments, like, oh, that was kind of funny. Not necessarily let's recreate that, but they're like, oh, this looks cool. Like, let's capture it. I thought that was really valuable to kind of learn. So now, kind of walking around, and it's sort of like I'm trying to incorporate it in the way I think of songs. Like, if I hear like a weird noise. Sometimes I'll pull up my phone and be like, oh, that vent had this weird low like hum, like, and I'll go and like record it. I hardly ever use those things. I'm listening for like interesting sounds and stuff sometimes, or like, oh, that horn had like a meep, 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 and I'll like record that. I think I'm looking at social media a little bit more like that. Like, what's like a cool, oh, I'm out in the world. I'm not constantly like, where can I find the thing that will become viral? But I'm just sort of like, oh, that was a funny moment. Or that's kind of like a funny idea. Let me capture it really quick. And then maybe I'll share it later. And if I think it's funny and cool, then people I get along with will also probably think it's funny and cool.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I'm operating with it at this point. And that was a really cool adjustment. And I'm still kind of slowly getting used to that.
Yeah. It's interesting to me that, like, I think especially for musicians, whether you have a label or not, but also for a lot of professions, for actors and actresses, I think for even in kind of the world of corporate, like, it is just becoming this, like, for small businesses, I've seen this meme going around TikTok. It's just like, you need to be a content creator in addition to this sort of profession. And honestly, I have complicated feelings about that. I think, right, as with all things social media, I think there's some amazing parts about that. You can build this relationship with your audience directly. But it's just like, there's so many responsibilities put on top of you that it's like, well, I can't do all of these things.
Right.
I guess, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but am I right? You are an independent artist. You're not signed to a particular label or management company.
Correct.
Okay. So how you and your peers and your friends, like, back in the day, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was kind of the goal, right? Is like you get signed up to a label and then they take care of a lot of those things, right? Distribution and marketing and development and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I know a lot of that has changed in many ways, and it is more viable to be an independent artist. How are you thinking about that? How generally has that experience been for you? And going forward, how do you think about it?
So far in my life, I've successfully kept all managers and record labels away from me.
Yeah.
That is a joke because I, for a long time, was like, why don't they like me? So Will specifically, I learned this from him. He was signed to a major label. And I think there were these deals called development deals where they're like, this person has a lot of potential. They're young, they look cool, they have good songs. Let's build them up and then promote them. The model now is sort of like to have these people already built up their own identity and audience online. Can we scale that? Can we see like, oh, let's just take what they are already doing that clearly is successfully working with this kind of niche audience.
Yeah.
And we'll use all our promotional tools and money to
take them to like the next level.
Yeah. And cast as many fishing lines as possible all around the world and gather that same audience all around the world, which I think makes a lot of sense. But that's just how it is. I think the thing with a major label, and I think this was always the case, if you aren't like a self-motivated artist doing your own stuff in the first place, it's not like the label is going to do all the heavy lifting for you. You still have to do all that heavy lifting, and then they just kind of do like they do that little extra push that can sometimes multiply what you're doing by 1,000 or whatever. So at this point in my life, my head isn't even thinking about labels or whatever. I'm just like, I'm doing my thing. I like what I'm doing. If somehow it catches on at any point, it'll just be because I'm doing what I like to do. And therefore I won't necessarily need to keep doing something I don't want to do. I don't know. Just not really thinking about it.
Yeah. I mean, that seems good. And also like some of the upsides, you have like full control, full ownership, right? Like that must be nice too, of like not really having people tell you what to do. Yeah.
It's true. And I think I'd probably have a hard time having a boss, to be honest, at this point, because I'm so used to just
Yeah.
doing this.
You are a beautiful animal. Dance along the road that will love you.
I'm curious about you developing your own, because to me, I'm like, I have to have healthy habits, I have like the schedule, I have like some small term goals. Otherwise, self-employed, don't have a boss, I might just play
Yeah.
Mario Kart all day.
Yeah.
How are you handling that? Do you have your own internal routine?
Not yet. I hoped like I would like one. So I'm new on this journey, as you know, and I think right now I'm kind of just taking it one day at a time and trying my best to, at the very least, like maintain some sense of a normal routine, or like a, hey, like every morning you've got your to-do list, you've got your emails, right? It's sort of like I'm continuing, I guess, a lot of the habits and routine that I developed in my corporate life.
Yeah.
But no, a lot, to be honest, I've got great mentors and friends who are, giving me good ideas, and I'm learning as much as I can. But I definitely am figuring out a lot of it as I go. I don't have like a, I like monetarily, actually, I've got like one specific goal, which is just to like match the salary that I was at. That's like, feels like a pretty good goal. But other than that, at this moment in time, there aren't really concrete milestones. And the other thing too, like I am looking at this as a 1-year experiment. I'm not I am not telling myself this is me for the rest of my life. I am saying this felt like a great moment in time to try this. And a year feels like a good amount of time to me to give it that try. So like if companies come knocking on my door to say like, hey, would you consider a full-time position? I'm not saying I wouldn't take that conversation.
Yeah, right.
Everyone I am available, but no, I really want to give it that full year, but then at the end of it, and I'll obviously learn as I go, but see if it is right or not. And there's a lot of factors for that for me, right? Like I am a social and collaborative person. I think I do my best work when I'm working with others, and I'll be working with clients and partners and that kind of stuff, but it's very different than, I've literally kind of been attached to one place that turned into 3 places for the past 11 years. So there's a lot of question marks I have, some of them financial, some otherwise, about like if this will be the right step for me or not. So does that answer your question?
Oh yeah. And I haven't heard you explain it, or I haven't heard you describe it as an experiment. But
Yeah.
I think that's really, it leaves the pressure off. And you don't need to close a door. Like you're young and you're trying something out. Like I guess I didn't think about it like that.
Yeah, because for me, some people with like for great reasons do spend a lot of time in a corporation, and they're like very intentionally planning, okay, at some point I want to be my own boss. And that wasn't in the cards for me. That wasn't something I've been planning for a long time. It's just kind of like this window of opportunity kind of came up, and I said like, now feels like a great time to try that. Right. And I also think some factors in my life, including the pandemic for one, I think that helped me realize that I could sort of just be at home every day, and that could be fine. And I could sort of rebuild my professional social network in different ways. Like, I think that was a little bit of a trial run for this new chapter, just in terms of the mechanics and the social aspects and that kind of stuff. So
was that when like the thought first entered your mind, or did you see any peers do this before you and you're like, oh, interesting?
Yeah, I'm very lucky that one friend former colleague who left Thomson Reuters in 2018, shout out to Casey Hall, he, as well as a handful of others, like they have been going down this path. And so just by nature of staying in touch with them and being their friend, both for years, I've just been able to be like, how's it going? Do you like it? Is this fun? What do you charge people? Is
Mm-hmm.
it hard? Is it great? Is it the worst? Right? Like just to kind of get a sense for it. And I think that relationship, those friendships, yeah, there wasn't a particular seed planted. I think it was just like it helps to um, demystify it a little bit and to put some real tangibles around like, well, here's how you do this and here's how to set up analysis. It's just like all
Yeah, right.
like take away some of that fear and the mental load of like, how do I do this? Is this even possible? Is this a real thing? Right. And so I think that Nikki Spencer, who is another
Yeah.
person in my life who she just like, yeah, I can do, like she has such amazing confidence in her skill sets and her abilities, and just like wakes up and like, I'm going to do a thing. And so definitely having people in my life who have done it and kind of paved the way is a big part of, I think, for me being like, oh, I'll give that a try. Like it seems, yeah. Man, you're turning this into your podcast now, but the other thing too that I kind of forget about, but is probably one of those underneath the surface, is my dad left his corporate job when I was in like third grade and worked for himself
Oh,
from there, like
interesting.
started a small thing. And worked from home too, like
Whoa.
before that was a real thing. Right. Like, I guess in some ways too, that kind of normalized
Yeah.
that is a viable option, not in the same industry as me, but yeah, I think that probably helped too.
Have you talked to him about what you're
Yeah.
doing?
Oh yeah.
A lot of
Loads.
relevant, whatever
Yeah.
correlates.
There's my dad and my brother and I in particular, we all, I think, talk a fair amount about career stuff and yeah, just all the big questions that sort of go along with that. And I was just on a little hike with my dad yesterday, and we talked a lot about it. And he's given me great advice as well.
Very cool.
Dad, if you're listening, thank you.
Yeah. I feel like just you talking about like you're getting advice from other people. I am turning this into my podcast, aren't
That's okay.
I? Yeah. Yes. Okay. Just you talking about like your friend Casey, who you probably talked to about advice. Your dad, Nikki. Um, it sounds like I can't think of the word analogous. It's just as similar to like I'm a self-employed musician, and I know a lot of other self-employed musicians, and we
Yeah.
can all kind of individually get together and collaborate when we want to, which is what happens
Yeah.
a lot. Or I'll be like, hey,
Yeah.
what do you think of this chord progression, or
Yeah.
what do you think of this song, or whatever. It almost feels like all of us, like, I don't know if I'd call myself an entrepreneur, but like all of us kind of self-employed people almost make up our own
For sure.
it's
Like a community.
in that way it kind of feels like not our own, yeah, it's like it is a community, and even though we're self-employed, it doesn't mean that we're alone at all.
Yeah.
It's almost
I
just like
think that
I don't know.
I think that's like vital, and I'm sure there are people out there who figure it out entirely on their own, but definitely for me and for a lot of people I know, it's like you just so heavily rely on people and trusted mentors and collaborators and friends just to like help each other along. And I think there's a really cool aspect of that. I've got a couple more questions for you.
Yeah.
One is, I remember I asked you once, like, how many groups or projects are you in currently? And you couldn't give me a number off the top of your head because you were in so many.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, how do you mentioned like a goal of yours is to do more collaborations over time, but how do you like, how do you think about that? If you go to your Spotify, you appear on a lot of people's stuff. You collaborate. You were just on our good friend Mike's album, which is really good.
Which you were also
That's true. I was just listening before this to Nick's album, which you're on. How do you, it seems like at least part of it is like friendship circles, but how do you make decisions about like when and how to collaborate? And those kinds of decisions, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but how much of it comes into play of like, oh, this would be fun, or I think I would get artistic validation out of this or whatever, versus like
Hmm.
money or business decisions and that kind of stuff? How do you make decisions?
Yeah, I would say I really don't think strategically business wise about any of them. I mostly just say yes because people are my friends, and I'm like, oh yeah, we've been making music for years. Let's do this. That sounds fun.
Cool.
It's mostly like a why not kind of thing. And yeah, it's just fun. It's something that I just kind of do one day, and sort of like with the bear attack stuff, it's like it's fun to be able to make a song with someone who asked me to do something with them, and
Yeah.
just it'll be there forever. It's cool. Like who knows what'll happen with it.
Yeah.
I think very rarely would saying yes to a situation like that be a bad business decision. It's just sort of like, yeah, more stuff, more collaborating, more learning,
Yeah.
more stuff that I'm a part of out there.
I think that's a very cool aspect of the artistic and music community, that people are just like, yeah, let's do it. Like you just kind of say yes to stuff.
It seems like kind of what most people are like, and I think that's really cool. Kind of no matter what tier you're on. Like
Yeah.
there's some people I work with where I'm like, I can't believe that you said that you're down for this. But yeah, I don't know if that's a LA thing or if that's a musician thing or what.
Well,
But
I was going to ask, especially as a lot of professions have very intentionally gone distributed, and you can be anywhere in the world, and you can like, I know there's at least some aspects of that in the music world, but like, how important is it now and in the future to be in LA, especially for maybe people listening to, I think LA is this like quintessential dream for a lot of artists, whether you're a musician or an actor. I'm going to go move to LA and do the thing. In your experience, how true has that been, of being able to drive over to someone's house or studio or whatever, as opposed to people who maybe want to stay in their own community?
I was thinking about this the other day. I mean, okay, here's an example. I was in between teaching students the other day, like last week, and I brought my guitar along so I could sit in this nice park in this neighborhood and just kind of strum along. And then there's this guy who just comes walking by with his like 3-year-old daughter, and they're just like looking at the water, and I'm just strumming chords, and he comes over and he's like, "Oh, sounds great," just. And then it turns out he's a musician. He's a producer who lives over where I was. He's like, we start talking about chords. He's like, oh, and like it becomes apparent that we both know music theory pretty well. And I'm like, oh yeah, oh that's cool. And I'm like writing down what he's talking about. Now we follow each other on Instagram. I have his phone number.
Cool.
Yeah, that's something that. But I think some things like that could happen really in any city. I think LA is maybe a little. I mean, maybe significantly. I don't know. But there's a lot of artists who come here because there are artists here, which means more artists come here.
Yeah.
So I think that is cool. I think that's more likely to happen here or in New York City than if you were in, I don't know,
Minneapolis.
But that would happen in Minneapolis,
So you're saying you're going to move? I'm just going to get into that in this podcast.
It wouldn't be the end of the world, Like it really could. It really would be. I think it could kind of happen anywhere. Something that is cool about LA specifically, though, is I think there is a higher percentage of people here who are artists or artist-minded. So
Sure.
Even when I'm walking around, I see the way people dress. Everyone has their own way of dressing. I like a lot of interesting food because there's so many cultures that kind of collide here and create whole new ways of cooking and stuff. So yeah, and as far as like so again, my friend Will Joseph Cook, we've collaborated a lot online, which is great. So in some sense, like you don't need to physically live somewhere to have a good impression on someone. You can like hear each other online, email, reach out, collaborate. But then there is a point where it's like, maybe we should meet up in person.
Yeah.
And then if you have the resources, you can, and the time, you can meet up and do something in person. So that's kind of cool about, where you live probably matters quite a bit less than it used to.
Yeah.
But it is really nice having the physical proximity of knowing a bunch of like really cool artists that I can go and play in real time and have conversations with in person.
Yeah. What can we expect from Okudaxij and Eric Radloff in the weeks, months, and/or years to come? What should we be looking out for? Maybe a tour at some point, maybe a fourth album. What's going on?
Definitely an album. Do you know what's kind of sad? I have not played a personal Okudaxij show since putting out my last album. There's been nothing.
Wow.
I know. And in fact, it's more likely that I'll put out another album sooner than I will play another show.
Then you'll do a double header.
And I'll do a double header, a double release show. I think I should do that. So yes, I'm about to have a child in my life. So probably for the next couple of months, might be a little quiet. Quiet.
Fair.
But I just finished a new song a couple days ago, and I'm excited about that one. And then I have like a whole bunch of songs I've been working on. I'm thinking new album by the end of the year. I'm excited. Just going to throw it out.
I can't wait to hear it whenever I get to. Eric, I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I do have a rapid fire round for you if you have a minute.
Oh, baby.
But before that, is there anything I forgot to ask you?
I think we should address my band name.
Fair.
Yeah.
So what's the meaning of Okudaxij?
Okudaxij, to strictly answer your question, has no meaning, but what it comes from is I was playing this video game called Persona 4 in college, and I was asked to create my character name. And this is a very long video game, so whatever you name your character, you're going to see it a lot. And I was like, I'm going to make the most bizarre looking name I can think of. And I just came up with Okudaxij. And over time, over the course of the game, I was like, this kind of grew on me. And then I used...
Wait, you just pulled it from thin air?
Yeah.
You just put letters together?
I just put letters together. Every letter, I was like, what would be a very strange letter to put after this next one? And
I think I've had the origin story wrong. I think in my mind, I thought it was the name of a character from a video game. Which it is true, but I did not know you actually developed it.
Yeah, I developed it myself. That's it. And then I used it as my screen name online for a little bit. And then eventually Bear Attack broke up, and I was like, that seems like a natural band name for me.
Yeah.
And if people can remember how to spell it, then they can find me. And if they can't, then I've had multiple people tell me, that's a terrible name. You need to change it.
And what do you say to that? Or what do you...
I say, I think it's funny and it makes me laugh. So I like it.
Two things. One thing I will say though is, and by the way, for anyone listening, if anyone's still listening this late in the game, I definitely encourage you to check out Eric, because if there's one thing about Eric and Okudaxij is you are completely yourself, and it is in many ways unlike anything you've heard, and it is beautiful and is unique and it is good writing, and you've got amazing music videos, and it's very, I think first, I'll speak for myself, from somebody who followed you from Bear Attack to Okudaxij, especially the first album. It was a little bit jolting because I think, I hope this doesn't come off as a criticism. I think Okudaxij is slightly less accessible in some ways, in that it, for me anyway, this is my experience and that's all I can talk to. It took me a few listens to, I think, quote unquote, get it, and then like really love it and develop a relationship with it. Whereas like Bear Attack, I could just like roll down the street and whistle some tunes and that kind of stuff. Right.
Yeah.
But I think that the name that you chose is aligned with who you are and just following whatever your creative vision is, whatever it is, and being completely and authentically yourself. And I think that's an amazing thing. And just point number 2 is the name of my business, which I don't know if I'm revealing on this episode or not, is a little bit similar. You can spell and it's easier to discover, but when people ask me about it, do you know the name of my business? Okay, we'll see if I keep this in or not, but it's Shrug Content.
Oh yeah, of course. Of course. Yes.
A lot of people are like, that's a dumb name. And I'm like, well, I think it's funny and I chose it pretty quickly, and I don't think you need a ton more reasons than that. You know, like my friends who like work in brand are probably like tearing their hair out right now if they're listening to this.
I love it.
But I don't know. I think sometimes you can just name something to name something, and it doesn't have to be more complicated than that.
I love that name, and I think it is
Thank you.
And I thought you have one up on my name in that you can say it to someone once, and they'll be like, "Oh, I know what words you just said."
Do you want to do rapid fire?
I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm stoked.
Okay. What is the best career advice you've ever received? Or alternate, worst career advice you've ever received? Your choice.
Oh man.
You can also
rapid fire. Do you know what I think of? I think of all these horrible exchanges I had when I interned at Warner Brothers Records for a summer, and I hated it. And basically everything I was around there was very, I don't know how to describe it, very record label, and I did not belong there. And almost everything anybody said while I was there, I'm like, I hate what you just said. And that has all informed me to not be a part of that world.
Yeah.
And I feel okay with that being out in the universe. I'm okay with that.
Okay. Sounds good.
So I don't have specific.
No, this is helpful. Who are you listening to right now that you're excited about?
I really love Mitski. She's like one of my favorites. I love Muna. My friends are in that band, and they're fantastic. There's this band Snail Mail, who I think is really, really awesome. And when did I go back? Oh, I was listening to Nick Drake, who's he rest in peace, Nick Drake from the 70s English singer-songwriter. I was just recently revisiting his music, which was pretty cool. And I have been listening to a CD of A Requiem by Gabrielle Fauré that I have been obsessed with for the past month or so.
Okay, I'll plug those in the show notes. Do you have one favorite song that you've written?
There's this new one that isn't out yet that I'm like, I think this is really, really good. Yeah.
That is the new song that is yet to be released. That's
probably my favorite one
that you've ever written.
As of right now, the new ones are
Does it have a name?
Anything, Anytime, Anywhere, which sounds a lot like Everything, Everywhere.
Everything, Everywhere, all at once.
Yes.
But what about a favorite of one that's out that people can listen to right now?
This is always changing. Let me go. I really love, and it didn't get, my Okudaxij music isn't like huge or anything, but not many people, I don't think, really cared for this song called I Think We Could Do It, which is the second song on my newest album, Wear Me Like a Glove. And I think that one's really cool, and I worked really hard on it. It's just kind of wild. The beat of it is really strange. So
yeah, I have a lot of favorites, but I think Who Knocks is probably my favorite one that you've ever written. And also,
I still love that.
One of the top comments on one of your videos, that trio of songs you released with the music video.
Yeah. Yep.
First comment on there says, I could listen to Who Knocks on repeat forever. So I agree with that person.
Nice.
Who's an underrated artist, big picture, that we don't give enough credit to?
The Beatles. Just kidding.
It's like,
I do love the Beatles though.
like-
Let me think. There is a friend of mine named Lou Roy who I think is really great, and I played on her album called Pure Chaos, and that one is really good. And then, yeah, I'm just gonna leave that. Go check out Lou Roy. I think it's really good.
I like it. Okay, this or that. Producing or performing?
Producing.
Enya or Radiohead?
Oh, Joel Lehman. I have to say Radiohead.
Pick up basketball or Mario Kart?
Oh, basketball.
Eric with long hair or Eric with short hair?
Eric with the long hair. I'm bringing it back right now.
I like it. Eric Radloff, also known as Okudaxij. I just want to say thank you so much for joining me. I'll leave you with one more comment that I picked up today from, I think you're either Bandcamp or SoundCloud. Somebody said, "This is the best songwriter around today. Can do no wrong. I wish the rest of the world would catch up."
Wow.
Eric, thanks for joining Connection Request.
Thank you, Joel. It has been a good time.
Lighter than air and so pretty it hurts. But I don't belong in that heaven. No,
That is it for today's episode of Connection Request. If you're not already following the show, go ahead and hit follow wherever you're listening to this right now. While you're at it, go check out Eric's music too. You can listen to his latest album, Wear Me Like a Glove, most places you listen to music. Please send music recommendations, baby names, as well as feedback and questions to connect@shrugcontent.com. That is connect@shrugcontent.com. If social is more your style, I'm down. Hit me up on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, or follow the show on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Until next time, be well, and thanks for listening.
yeah, 'cause I'd see the pain in her eyes, and I'd say they look just like mine. Oh, ever since I met you, we belong together, like apple slice of cheddar, peanut butter and banana. Even though we mess up, we'll forgive each other, 'cause I'm a lot like you, and you're a lot like me. Ever since I met you, we belong together, 'cause I'm a lot like you, and you're a lot like me.